Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at QUnit, which is a library, a JavaScript testing library from jQuery. You don't need jQuery to run it, but it is built by the jQuery team for testing JavaScript. Right now I just set up a directory called a QUnit. I'm going to install QUnit through Bower. One great thing about QUnit is you don't really need anything up, and you don't need anything to run it. You just need the framework in a browser, and you're good to go. So I've got QUnit installed here. I'm going to set up a couple files here. Test.html. It's going to be a file. We're going to write our tests in a file. So test.js, and then we're going to have some sort of function to test. So we'll call that the function.js, and we'll load this up in our browser. And before we even get started looking at QUnit, let's kind of talk about writing our tests. So we will have some sort of requirements from a customer, a client for a project, whatever it is. So let's say that the customer or whatever it is wants a squaring function. So it takes in a number and it returns the square of that number. So it should be a function that returns the square of a number argument, and it should also tell the user he is a jerk if he passes not a number. Okay, so those are our requirements. And again, before we even get started with QUnit or setting up our page, we can just start writing those tests using some basic methods from QUnit. And the way we do that is we define our test, we give it a title. So let's say square exists. So we're going to call our function square, and that takes in a callback. And so there's a handful of assertions that you can use in QUnit. We're really only going to take a look at a couple of them, but I'll refer you to the website to learn about all the differences between all sorts of different assertions that can do deep checking and all sorts of different things. But the first one we're going to look at is OK. And OK just expects something to be true. And so we're just passing it square, and we're saying square exists is our message if that does work out. Let's see, it's going to be a function, so let's write a test for that really quick. We'll say square is a function. That's the title of the test. And here we'll say square. Now we're going to say type of square equals function. And then if it does, then we will say square is a function. Okay, so we've got that there. Now square doesn't exist. It's certainly not a function right now. But let's go ahead and set it up so that we can run these tests. So I'm jumping to this test.html. You can call that whatever you want. And what I'm going to do is drop in a few things. Let's see. So in the body, we need a div called QUnit, or with an ID of QUnit. And we need another div with an ID of QUnit-fixture. And so cool, we've got those. And now we need our scripts. So here in this, we've got some CSS that we definitely want to include. So let's get that on the page here. And we don't need that leading slash. And then of course we need to get our JavaScript on the page, or the actual QUnit library. Copy that, and we'll drop that right here. And let's see, we don't need this, and we don't need that forward slash. Then the next thing we need is our actual function. So we created that empty file called the function. There's absolutely nothing in there. And then we've got our tests that we want to run. So that's our basic setup. We can actually go ahead and run this right now. Everything's going to fail, of course, but that's okay. So what we can see here is that in our square exists test, 1 failed, 0 passed of 1 that was run. And same thing in square was a function, or square is a function. So let's go ahead and let's get those to pass. So we need square to exist, and we need it to be a function. So here, I'm going to say var square equals function. And now if we go back and rerun our test, bam, they both pass. Square exists, and it is a function. Clearly, that's not quite the requirements that we had, so we need to run a couple more tests here. So another test is going to be let's say that it works. So it returns the square of a number argument, returns, or let's call it square returns, and here's our function, And here we can say, now we'll use a different type of assertion, which is equal. So equal allows you to give it the actual output and the expected output, and then an optional message. So the actual output is going to be square 2. We expect that to be 4, and we'll say argument of 2 returned 4. So again, this is going to fail because we have not added that to our function, but let's go ahead and just see it fail. Boom, hey, it failed. The result was undefined. The difference is between 4, which is what we expected, and undefined, which is what we got back. So let's go ahead and mark this up. So now we're going to say return num times num, and we rerun our test, and now it failed, or now it passed. So now we've got argument of 2 return 4, and if we wanted to kind of really expand on that, we could throw all this into our own little loop here. So var I equals 0, I less than, let's say, 12, and I plus plus, and then we could take this, throw it in here, and say I, and this is really only the case because this is such a simple function, but here we could say I, oops, returned, and we expect it to return I times I, and we could run that again, and now you can see that we've got 12 passing of 12 tests run, and each one, 0 return 0, 1 return 1, 2 return 4, and so on all the way up to 11. So hey, that's cool. Now one more that we mentioned up here is that it should tell the user he's a jerk if he passes not a number. So in that case, we can use the same equals functionality. So return your return error. Let's call it that. Here's our callback function. And then in here, let's go ahead and use equal again. So we're going to say equal, and in this we're going to say this is a string, and the output that we're expecting is you are a jerk. And here we'll say returned jerk message. Okay, so again, this is going to fail because we don't have any error handling on that. So it says, the return was actually not a number, and the difference between you are a jerk and not a number is, visually presented right there. So in our function, we want to say if type of num not equal number, return you are a jerk. Okay, otherwise we'll return the proper response. I think that's how we had it set up. Let me just look. You are a jerk, yes, and we can run that test one more time, and now it passes. So return jerk's message. In that case, we might want to say returned, and then if we want to build this up a little further and say let's do that, and say here we've got an array, here we've got an object, here we've got a function, and that's good. Okay, so all these should return the you are a jerk, and they all did. There you go. So again, you can see here that there was not a lot of work done. I didn't need any special software other than the framework itself. Again, there are ports to this in Node.js and various other environments, but out of the box, QUnit is really, I guess, the barrier to entry is super low. You just get the framework, write up some tests. You can see in most cases here we wrote the test before we even had the function, which is a little bit of an introduction to test-driven development, writing your test before you even write the function. But anyway, so that's a quick look at QUnit. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good one.